What's up, guys and girls? So as you can see on step one here, take the skulls apart, and that line there, that's where obviously the moulding was done originally in the factory, so I've just sanded that down as best as I could on both of the craniums, just to try and help smooth it out a bit. Then I followed it up here with obviously the prime, so obviously got the paint there, outdoors naturally because of, you know, the toxicity level, so just literally get the spray and go get a nice even coat. It came out a bit grey, to be honest. It wasn't actually as white as I thought it'd be. I thought it'd be, you know, like it says coral white, but it was actually, well, if they class that as white, I don't know what is, but irregardless, that was the primer. That's obviously the second step for this out of the 5 steps. Just a nice little coat over all of them. Obviously took it apart so I could make sure I can get into all the nooks and crannies. Obviously on the eye area, the eye socket, and the inner part of the head and whatnot. So once you've done that, obviously we will move on to step 3, which is the beginnings of the paint indoors, which is coming up shortly. So those are the first 2 steps, guys and girls. Just before we get into the steps which I take inside to continue the painting, there's going to be another video dropping soon of me actually painting the base. I'll show you the process and the paints that I use for that, because as you may have seen, the colour and the finish on the base is not up to standard. So I will be modding the base as well very soon, before I actually crack on with actually putting all that together and completing the next 4 issues. So that's coming up as well next, as well as the weathering of the Terminator inside and out. So you'll see that as well soon. Alright, guys and girls, I've got some Zandri Dust here. So that's the base. Obviously I've primed them. In the other video you saw outside that I sprayed them with the primer, so they're good to go. Obviously I've got to leave the teeth. I'm not going to paint over them just yet. So what I've done, I've thinned the Zandri Dust with a bit of water on the recommendation I've had from a good friend on the Terminator group. Big shout out to Heath Wolford. So thank you very much for your recommendations and your help and advice on how to do this. So I'm just going to show you guys the process fully. And then I've received the new packs, by the way, so I'll be starting the second part of the base once this is all done. So I'm just going to apply the coat now. You only need the 1 coat apparently. That's good to go. Okay, I'm just going to do inside of the skull as well, so you can see that. What I'll do is I'll skip ahead and I'll just show you the parts, because obviously I've taken it apart. I've unscrewed this skull because the jaw and everything was connected by a screw and a spring. So I've taken that all apart, and I'll do this part first, then obviously the lower part of the skull, and then the jaw last, so you can see all those parts once they're complete and dry before we move on to the next steps. So now I'll just work on the eyes, and like I said, avoid the teeth for the moment. We'll come to that at a later point, so make sure you're getting all those grooves. Be careful not to touch the teeth just yet. Just do the side as well. And this is a new for me. I've never ever done this. I've never painted a skull before, so it's a first, work in progress. I've got my instructions, and you know, Heath has been very helpful with videos as well, so thank you again. So I should hopefully get it how I want, but it doesn't have to be perfect, obviously. You know, it's an extra for the base on top of the skull and whatnot that already comes with it. So that's looking like that. So I'm just going to leave that to dry. I've got a few more points to do, but I'll do that off camera. Okay, so unfortunately the paint actually run onto the teeth, but that's how it's looking right now. Just leave that bit to dry, and then we're going to move on to the actual teeth. So I will do my best to avoid the teeth on the jaw, but if it happens, it happens, and I'll just make up for it later. I'll be honest, I'm just going to go over it. I can't be bothered to miss it, so I'll work it out after. I'll see what happens. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'll do my best.
quite a lot of stages for this, so but I'm looking forward to how the finished product looks when it's all weathered and looks kind of like a skull that would be, you know, aged, separate to the one that came with the actual base itself, because obviously that's got the look they're going for is from the movie, where obviously you see the Terminators walking around crushing skulls. That's like from the ash fallout, so that's why they're black, because it's the residue from obviously all the bombs and whatnot that have settled on the skulls over time. Just like kind of like a, you know, how ash and magma what dries on humans if they're unfortunate to be involved in a volcano. So that's how that's looking there. So I'm just leave those bits to dry, and then we'll move on to the next part. Okay, so giving those bits some time to dry, the two skulls. The bigger parts are still a little bit wet, so I'm not going to work on those bits just yet. So I'll work on the actual lower part of the jaw, because that's dry enough. So this part, this is obviously step 3. We've done the primer. We've done obviously the Zandri Dust, which has been mixed and thinned with water, and now we're going to use the Earth Shade. So it's the Agrax one from Citadel. So give that a shake. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to apply that to the lower jaw to give it that nice weathered look. So I'm just going to dab that on. Again, this is the first for me, so it's all trial and error. I'm sure it will come out certainly better than what it looked like when I first bought them from Amazon. As you've seen in the first video I did in my garden, where I showed you how they looked before they were primed. But already, just with this little bit of a wash, I'm already liking how that's looking. So just do a bit more. I'm going to get in the teeth there as well, because obviously we want these skulls to look weathered. We don't want them to look brand new or bleached. You know, they haven't been out in the sun. That's what the sun does, it bleaches the skull. These need to look like they've been, you know, on a field or an old city for many years, collecting dirt and dust. So this should do the trick, and from what I saw, from what Heath posted, shared with me on his, they look great. Obviously this is a nice addition to that. So that's how that part looks there at the moment. So obviously it's a lot darker now. I'm just gonna let that dry, and then I'm gonna move on to the actual cranium, the top part of the skull, because the lower part is still just drying a tiny bit. Okay, so I've got the top part of the skull there, nice and dry. So now we're just gonna apply the wash to it. So with this one, as I've got two, what I'm going to do, similar to what Steve Williams did on Facebook, he crushed one of the skulls up. So I'm going to obviously get a hammer, and I'm going to crush this into millions of pieces, not too small obviously, and I'm going to put them underneath the Terminator's foot. So obviously it looks like he's crushed a skull by walking on it. So that's a nice little effect and detail, similar to what you would have seen in the film, you know, in that opening scene where they're on the battlefield against the Terminators, the Resistance. You see the cyborgs walking over lots of human remains, you know, skulls and whatnot. So I'm trying to make this base as authentic as it can be, you know, movie realistic, like a almost like it's going to look like a museum when I've got it complete and in my man cave, because I've also got some really cool bits that go with it, like from Sarah Connor related, and also a few other bits from the second film. I'm not going to mention what they are yet. I'll reveal them when I do my next Terminator video. Obviously this is a supplementary video because I'm showing you the actual mod with the paint of the skulls, which I think some people might like, and also just so I can document it and watch it back myself, because it's an interesting process and something different something I haven't done before. Obviously the build is the build, but this is an extra level of detail and love. So there you go, the weathering's come on nicely. I'm going to apply a tiny bit more because this obviously got a lot more surface area to cover, and then I'll move on to the other part of the skull. Right, so I've done the top part of the skull on both of the lower jaw, so now I'm just going to do the upper jaw and upper part of the skull because that's nice and dry. So you can already see the difference in colour. How noticeable is that? So, you know, it's not even dry yet, and you can really see the weathering has done a nice number on those parts of the skull. So I'm really happy with that. It's looking really good so far. So it's coming together how I want it to. It's taken a bit longer to dry than I expected, but because I also want to, once this is all done, I'm going to show you, but I'm also going to show you the weathering of the Terminator, because in the first part of the video outside in the garden again, I used one small pot of Nuln oil to weather the metal on the front. I didn't do the back. I might do a tiny bit on the back, but I want to add I ordered another bottle of Nuln oil to go over the Terminator one more time. So you can, because I think in parts there wasn't enough. So I've ordered another one, I've got that. I'm going to reapply another base layer of that oil just to make it look even more weathered, and then I'll show you. And obviously as I'm filming inside now, the lighting's a bit better for you to really see that, because it looked a bit whited out, or you know, the shining glare was quite strong in my garden. So but you'll see in the segments of the video that I make the first base coat being applied outside and then the second one inside. And obviously once it's all dry, and then I start working on him again when the base is complete and we get the next issue soon. Should be hopefully end of this month, June. We just had them delivered yesterday on the 4th of June. So there's another one due to be dispatched on the 10th. Obviously that could come in a week, 2 weeks, we don't know. So, but there should be another one by the end of this month, and I think I'm really hopeful this time that it's going to have the pole to actually finally support the Terminator on the base, because obviously the base is going to be finished soon. So just going over all that, so I'm just applying as much as I think it needs. You know by just the look really if it needs a bit more. This has come up really nice, to be honest. It's really getting in there good in all the grooves. Really nice, look at that. So it's looking a lot better already. Definitely more weathered and definitely more realistic. So there we go. I'm just going to let that dry off and then do the other one, and then we'll move on to the next step. Right, so that's all dry now, taken a while, but nonetheless we are there. So now we're going to move on to step 4. So what we're going to do here, we're actually going to apply dry brushing now with the can't really pronounce it, Ushati Bone colour. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just put just a little bit of it on there. From what I'm advised, you don't need too much of it. Just going to put a little bit on there. And the key with this part is to get as much off as you can, and just flick it onto the what you're applying it to. So I'll rub a bit there, and then I'll brush it off there, and then just a bit more on the tissue as well. And then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to literally just flick it like that, so it starts to set on there. I think I've just got maybe a tiny bit too much on that first bit, but I'll rub it out. So this is obviously going to bring it back out a bit more, so it's a bit more of a bone colour. So you can see that already to the other side there. So it's already looking a bit different. Just be careful at this point to try and avoid the teeth. Try not to touch the teeth on that bit. So let's get some more. Dab that down. And then flick it again. And with this, you just kind of want to do it until you think you're happy with it. So So we don't want it too heavy on there. Still needs that weathering, so you can see that weathering still through there nicely from the last part we worked on with the earth shade, where we washed it with that. So see, that's how it's looking on the outside, and you can see the difference on the inside there. It's a lot darker, so obviously you want to do the same. Get as much off as we can, and then just flick it again. So my technique's not amazing. Haven't ever done this before, especially this sort of thing. So yeah, I think by the time I've done all parts of the skulls, it'll be a bit better. But to be honest with you, it's looking alright. Not too bad so far. So I'll finish that off camera, and then I'll show you before I move on to the next part of the skull. Right, so if you look at the two of them, so the one jaw that's been done and the one that hasn't, you can see a real difference now. Obviously, I know it looks a lot lighter. Obviously, it's more bone-like colour. This is, you know, really weathered. But I am going to be adding another point. There's one more step after this, which is going to change it up even more to make it even more look burnt out. But I'm quite happy with that, to be honest. I can still see the weathering through there. I've probably done maybe a little bit too heavy, but it's fine. I'm going to add the other part after. So that's the comparison there. So I'm going to move on to the top part of the skull now and just repeat the process for obviously that, and for the rest of the head as well. So I'm just going to, as you can see, just brush it on nice and lightly. Like I said, it's dry brush, so we don't want to go too heavy with the dust. So I think this one here I will leave a little bit more of the undercoat through, so you can see that coming through a bit more, and then I'll probably go heavier on the other one just so you can see a bit of a difference between the two, because I don't want them to be exactly the same. You know, no one skull is going to be the same. Obviously they don't look too different. You know, don't want to look more beat up than the other one significantly, because obviously it's just not going to look great. And these two skulls I have are already very different to the one I've mentioned for the Terminator. So that's come with the base, sorry. So there's going to be some, you know, differences between them anyway. So that's the top part. I'm just going to do the under part, and then I'll show you after how that's looking. Okay, so there's the first part of the top of the skull done. So you can see again the comparison of colours there. So quite different. I haven't gone too heavy on that one, but this one I'm going to go a bit heavier on with the bone dust colour, just to see how it looks. So I'm just going to do that now, then I'll move on to the other parts. Okay, for the two lower jaws, I've actually done them slightly differently. So I've painted over that dust on one and not on the other, so you can just see the difference in the colour there of the teeth. So just to mix it up a bit, really. Just, you know, I'm playing around with it. It's experimental. So I've done obviously both the top of the skulls. They look, to be honest with you, I went quite heavy on one, but they don't look too different really. So anyway, going to move on to the upper skulls now. So obviously with the eye sockets, that section there. So again, like I said, it's dry brushing, so you want to get off as much as you can. Don't go too heavy with it, and then just lightly brush over it like so, and just build up the layers to a point that you're happy with, and then stop. So I'll be honest, I think it looks pretty good about this on it, but obviously I've taken advice from someone who has made them very good, and I'm very confident that the final step after this is going to come out as close as it can to how he has done it, and what he's advised me on. So I will trust him, and I'll do as instructed, and hopefully I'll bring you guys some something very nice, something special, you know, something very cool. So that's how it's looking on that side at the moment in comparison to obviously that side. I'm just going to crack on with that. Going to do both final parts of the skull, and then I'll show you how they're looking before I move on to step 5. So just a bit more there, and I'll do underneath as well. We'll obviously get right into all those cracks, crannies, crevices, whatever you want to call it. And again, try not to go on the actual teeth themselves. Just leave that bit. So I'm still pretty going a bit heavier on it with it than most people would, but this is obviously what I'm playing around with. So, but I'm already liking how they're looking. To be honest, they're a lot better than what they were. So that's how that's looking at the moment. So I'm going to crack on with the inside part, do the other section, and then I will show you. Right, so just before I move on to the other one, I just want to quickly show you actually, compare the two. So you can see the difference there. I mean, I've only done a very light coat on that, but that looks, for me, fantastic. I'm really happy with that. It's not even dry yet, but that to me looks like a nice, dirty, bone-looking like skull. So yeah, just going to do the other one now, and then we're finished. Okay, so this skull I actually painted over the teeth, because obviously, remember on the other one of the other jaws, I did the same. So you can see the slight difference between those two there. Obviously, this one looks a bit lighter because I've gone a bit heavier with it, and obviously the teeth there I've left. So that's how they're looking. So that's all done. So we can move on to the final step, step 5. Right, so the final step is step 5. We're going to take the technical Typhus Corrosion. So this is really nice, dirty stuff apparently. I'm going to pop it on the lid. You don't need a brush for this, you just need some tissue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dab it, and then dab it onto the skull, and just brush it on. So almost like you actually want to take it off as you're brushing it on at the same time. So just trying to embed it in there. So bear with me, again, something I haven't done before. As you can see, that's nicely making the skull a bit more dirty again. Obviously I'll do that on the top and underneath as well. And I'll show you the comparison for the two of them, with and without, just so you can see how it's looking. Okay, so I've just put a little bit on for the moment. I haven't finished it yet, but already that's what we're kind of going for. Trying to get that deeper, dirtier colour on there. So I just got to make sure I do it nice and evenly, or it's going to look shit. And I don't want it to look shit, obviously. It's a labour of love. But obviously it's not going to be perfect because it's my first time, and like I said before, what skull out there is perfect? There is no perfect skull, especially in a post-apocalyptic war with machines. Okay, so it's coming through, so there's a few more gaps there, so I'm just going to do that off camera and underneath, and then I'll show you. So I'm just doing the underneath part now, that's how it's looking on the top at the moment. So there's a few bits just drying there, but overall I'm liking how it's starting to look. Just got to be careful not to scrub too hard, because I don't want to rub anything else off or, you know, mess it up. Remember what I said, you kind of want to obviously dab it on, but still try to brush it off, like trying to get it off it basically. So you can see how that makes it look nice and dirty. So there's like soil, sediment, and probably shit, and you know, who knows what. Yeah, so that looks, to me that looks decent. I don't know about anyone else, but let's show you the comparison there. So obviously that's how it's looking before and after, and I'd say quite a significant difference. So just going to move on to the other one, then we'll move on to the other parts. Okay, so I've done both the top skulls, the cranium. Now I'm going to work on the, obviously this part of the skull. So I'll show you the first one, and then I will do the other one off camera. So let's rough this guy up. So it's been in the trenches, and obviously you can go all over. So I'm going to go over the teeth here as well. Get right into the eye sockets. You know, let's face it, there's going to be no stone unturned, or should I say bone, on this. So I'm going to go quite heavy as well on this one, because obviously it's the main part of the head. Really dirty it up. But as those two are drying there, you can see, you know, they've got a nice dirty bone look about them. And obviously once it's set even more, all the paint, everything I've done, as well as this part, it's going to look pretty cool. So with the parts that I'm not able to actually dab with the tissue, so under there's a lot of nooks and crannies, I'm just using the brush, because otherwise it's not going to look even, especially in the eye sockets as well, because to get into that part it's quite tricky with a bit of tissue, and the tissue obviously just keeps falling apart as it gets used more. Also I can do a couple of little just fine details just on some other areas as well. So, but you can see how much that's changed. I've been working on that for about 5 or so minutes. Obviously this one takes up quite a lot of the solution, so I'm going to do the jaws, the lower jaw first before I do the other one, because I want to make sure that they've got their coat, and obviously they won't need much either. So let's just show you. Just going to add a little bit more of the brush, just a few areas here, and then you can see how that looks in comparison to the other one. And as this one's drying as well, I'm starting to see it coming alive, and I'm very happy with it. So that's how he's looking, and then from that side as well. Let's show you a comparison to the other one that hasn't been worked on yet. So yeah, that looks very clean, and you know, not great really. And look at the difference in colour. So I'm just going to move on to the lower jaw, and then I'll come back to the last part there. Right, so this last part here, working on the lower jaw. Luckily both of them won't require much because they are nice and small. So getting that right into the teeth there as well, make them look really dirty, because let's face it, the teeth certainly wouldn't be white after spending all that time in the ground. They'll probably be a bit whiter, but I'm not going to faff around with that. Let's face it, they're just going to be on the base, and you'll look at them, but you won't give them much of a look after that, because you'll be focusing on the Terminator and everything else around it. So okay, so there's the two lower jaw comparisons. So as you can see, again, quite a significant difference in terms of colour and how it looks. I'm just going to do the other one now, and then we'll move on to the last part. Right guys and girls, so they are finished, and overall I'm pretty happy. Obviously you can see there's a slight difference in colour there. Oh, I went a lot heavier on this part, because this section here I'm actually going to smash, so it won't matter too much. Obviously that's how it looks fully complete, but I'm not going to have a fully complete skull on the base anyway, so this one I will smash. So obviously that's how it looks inside. I will smash that one. That's going to go under the Terminator, his feet. These parts will be somewhere on the base. This one, I'm not too sure. Maybe I'll like have kind of mess around with it. Again, I'm going to take the top off, because the thing is about these, I can't actually get it off. You can see where it's joined. So, and even though it's completely flush, it doesn't look great. So that's obviously how it looks inside. I'm really happy with the quality of it. You know, it looks so much better than what it did before. You know, it's not perfect. You know, I'm not a painter. It's my first time doing this sort of thing, but I think just it looks so much more realistic, and you know, more beat up and more like an old skull would look like. You know, very dirty. You know, nice details and the colour there. So I'm really happy. And again, a massive thanks to Heath from the Facebook group on Terminator for sending me some videos, some tips, and also what to buy. Obviously, I'll link in this video where I got them from and what ones you should use. Just a few things to mention. I did use a brush for the eyes and stuff, and trying to...
Please remember to like, comment and subscribe, guys, if you liked today's video. And I'll be seeing you soon for the next stage, as I said earlier in the video, with modding the base and weathering the Terminator. Take care, and I'll see you soon.